recording.
Preparing live stream. And we are going live.
Oh, that's right. I got to go share this.
Yes, we forgot to last week.
Setting up live feed. We are live on Facebook right now, 7 p.m. or a little bit after that every Monday night right here on Facebook Live. Tommy McCay with 3D Politics Live. I've got David Van, David Oldham right here with me. If you've never visited us before, you know me. I'm Tommy McCay, your host. You can catch me at Tom E. McCay on Facebook and Twitter, McCay at 3dpoliticslive.com, and David Van, of course, at soonerpolitics.org. You can catch him for all the state information news, and our constitutional expert, David Oldham, with constitutionalgrounds.com. And actually both, by the way. But here we are today. Before we rush in, because I know we got 1,000 things to talk about. I know we're going to talk about the 16th Amendment, the census, the Trace Act. We got a state legislature update, the new cop cars in Tulsa. That's always exciting. I want to ask questions about UBI, but before we do that, what's going on in your life, guys? Let's just do a little relaxing discussion.
Hey, the bars opened up on Friday, and I will tell you, the people that were out were chatty like I've never seen them before. It's like these people were cooped up and needed to get out, and it's like a little puppy. It's like, you know, around new people, just all excited. I was surprised they weren't wetting themselves, but the you know,
You got out there though, did you?
it was that kind of sense. I mean, it was strange because there were a lot of people out, and people were just chatty. I mean, they wanted to talk with whomever. I mean, and wherever.
Yeah. And churches. People are going to church now.
Yep.
I had one new Christian. He'd never been to church before, and he was just a devout disciple. And so he came up to me, wanted to give me a kiss. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? He says, hey, well, Scripture says, greet one another with a holy kiss. That'll put you in jail, won't it, Tom?
Not me. Not me.
Only if you're sniffing their hair first.
Just Tom. Come on. Oh, yeah, the churches are opening up, and that is just some good stuff. And of course, with the bars closed, you know, I just was basically dry. You know, I quit drinking totally the whole time because
that's only because you couldn't get anything at the grocery store. You were saying, although I don't know, I never saw anything out. Maybe particular brands or something, but I never. But I don't drink enough to notice.
You know, I've been a stay-at-home dad for the last 30 years. Didn't change my life a lot, really.
I know we're going to get into legislative updates a little bit later, but is it true they're going to continue to allow home delivery of liquor?
I sure hope so.
Well, and from the constitutional perspective, they better. Yeah. I mean, there is no reason, there's no lawful excuse for them to be prohibiting it. So
I mean, think about it. Remember, it was just a year or so ago, you couldn't, a liquor store couldn't sell beer cold, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because they didn't want to encourage people to be drinking a cold one as they leave the liquor store. So
and
they want to make it inconvenient.
And you go to Louisiana, and although they tape the top, you can buy it at the drive-through. You can buy a margarita, Mai Tai from the machine.
Okay. You're blocking me, Oldham. I was trying to make a point. So they don't want you to have the convenience of of buying it and drinking it on the way home from the liquor store. They want you to have to go home and then put it in the cooler and then start drinking it once it's cold enough for your taste.
Right.
But yeah, and that's all under the guise of public safety. And yet they said, oh, but we can't be delivering it to people's home. We've got to make them get out and drive to go get their beer. Only in Oklahoma.
Well, I don't know. Nationwide, they treat us like animals. It's like, maybe the puppy will think this if we.
Oh, remember, you're nothing more than a rodent or a cockroach that everybody needs to be protected from. You're a vector of disease and a filthy animal.
Yeah.
So.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Here's the light.
Lightning.
Yeah.
So,
Kind of washed out.
yes, let's start with this Trace Act and some information on the census. How does the census connect to the Trace Act, and what is the Trace Act?
Let me start, because Oldham's got a lot to add to this, but I want to start out with saying, constitutionally, it was written by our founders that every 10 years we do a head count.
Okay.
And that's essentially what it is, isn't it, Oldham? Just a head count.
That's the census.
Okay. That part of it, it's very important that we fully comply with the head count, because our equal protection under the law is so important. And this is part of the reason why California loves having all those illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, because they get to count them on the census, and they get a lot more members of Congress because of it.
Right.
And then at the same time, it's not that these illegals can get elected, but the liberals will get elected in California because they have them.
Okay.
Oldham.
Well, that's very true. And the tie-in between them is in the questions that they ask and the fact that, quite frankly, constitutionally, you don't have to participate. Now, the Trace Act, or it's in Congress, it's HB 6666.
Mm-hmm.
And TRACE stands for testing, reaching, and contacting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And testing, reaching, and contacting everyone, TRACE. And what they are planning on doing is spending $100 billion. Wow. And in fact, it may have just gone through, because they just passed in the House a $3 trillion stimulus package, which most is not stimulus. It's all sorts of revamping of society. But it doesn't look like it's going to pass the Senate. But the Trace Act was to earmark $100 billion to go to states, municipalities, and non-government agencies to go around and perform what health departments have been doing for a very long time, and that is, in an epidemic, trying to find out who's been exposed to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is that they want to take it up a giant notch and ask you not only get you to participate, but try to get you to give up your cell phone data so that they can find out where you have been and whether you have been in your home or elsewhere. And so there's going to be neighbors who are involved in this whole thing, who are going to be hired, who are currently out of work, some laid off government workers and so forth. And they are going to be trying to get this information from you. And then the likelihood, and especially in some of your more tyrannical states, is that they are going to use this data to then try to force quarantines on people. So if you have been in the presence of somebody for more than 10 minutes, closer than 6 feet, more than 10 minutes, this somebody who's been exposed, if you were in that person's presence up to 2 days before they showed symptoms, then you will be required to stay in your home. No due process, just
Jeff Foxworthy joke where if this,
Exactly.
and that, then you may have been exposed.
Exactly. And if you are in the house of somebody who's been exposed, you may or you will be required to quarantine. They're saying up to 2 weeks and maybe longer.
So, this whole concept of social distancing, we talked about it last week, Cuomo or de Blasio hiring an extra 1,000 people to be social distance ambassadors. And of course, they're doing the same thing in LA through philanthropic association like the Rockefeller Center, which GT Bynum right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma has signed us up for. We are a sister city, so to speak, with LA. And now I would suggest we probably have social distancing ambassadors right here in Tulsa that are being paid with our tax money, is my guess. And GT's hiring them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's totally conjecture, but I know he has told us, admitted he's aligned us with the philanthropic group Rockefeller Center to do social distancing and data control.
God.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, that's his MO, isn't it?
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me in the least that that's what he would be doing.
What do you got?
We had an attack of the giant fingers there for a second.
Sorry about that. I had to fix my screen for a second so I could read something.
Well,
Man, are you ready to talk? What are you ready to do?
yeah, here's what I wanted to share this with you. These are scale size. This is supposed to be what a virus is supposed to look like. Down at the bottom, you see circled in yellow there. That's the Wuhan virus. And that little virus this is a global historical pandemic almanac, if you will.
Okay.
And so you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 other pandemics that we know of that have done far more than, in actual fatalities than this one. Now, if you go up to the second row, and in fact, let me move, I think.
Van, while you're doing that, I got a question. Why do they all look like the AT&T animated a mascot for the television phone commercials?
The cricket, is that the cricket guy?
Oh no, they got that thing that. All right, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say I'm actually one of the survivors of the Hong Kong flu. I actually contracted it back in 1968 as a 7-year-old, and I remember my grandma got it. And she was, she had to deal with the symptoms for months. But there was a couple of weeks there it was really bad. For me, it was a tough flu. It was an influenza.
Right.
But we lost 1 million people worldwide, over 100,000 here in the United States.
Right.
And it hit pretty much December and January. I picked it up in late December. It ruined my holidays.
Right.
But, we didn't close anything. And really what we're coming up with now, we've got a little bit of hindsight, so we can do some Monday morning quarterbacking. You've got the Iceland model, you got the Sweden model. And Sweden shares a long border with Norway, who's almost a polar opposite in their public policy. And their outcomes don't seem to be any different. And you look at things, and yes, Italy got hit hard first. But now that the other, populations of Europe have been hit, Italy doesn't seem that much different than Spain or France or the United Kingdom. So now, yeah, there are some that get hit harder than others. But the point I'm getting at is this. There were vast differences in public policy. And yet the outcomes don't seem to be impacted by those differences. I want to know what you guys think.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, if you're just now joining us, you are finding out what 3D Politics is all about live here on Facebook every Monday night, 7 p.m., you're going to catch me, Tommy McCay, and David Van and David Oldham here discussing all of the politics and things that impact us here in Oklahoma and across the globe. But yeah, it seems as though these viruses have trends that all are similar in their entrances and exits.
Yeah. Now,
So
there
they
have been,
are.
yeah.
If you stop and think about it, no matter what your philosophical bent, let's understand that we're talking about what insurance policies call acts of God, acts of nature, force majeure, things like that. The point is, it's beyond any human control. I mean, the audacity for us to think that we can control something like a plague is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, it's so far beyond that. I mean, that's why each individual has so much the responsibility to take care of themselves. We can't care for the rest of everybody. I can't take care of everybody else. I can care for myself. That's why we are set up the way we are.
Yeah.
And liberty, that's why liberty works best. Because we take care of ourselves. We leave everybody else to themselves. We do what we can to help, of course. I mean, we're good neighbors. We should be anyway. But you know, wear PPE, not PPH, as I've been calling it. And if you're doing it for those reasons, you know what? You're going to be safe. You're going to be okay. I look at us, right?
Yeah, I just want to say that's a very good point, you know, you're making about how the difference between now and maybe 20, 30 years ago, I think it's best summed up. Rush Limbaugh used to talk about in the 90s, a few times he played Charlton Heston reading the foreword to Jurassic Park, the book Jurassic Park. It's basically, who do we think we are that we can control nature?
Right.
And I think it's part of that God complex that is prevalent in today's society. We think because we have more knowledge, you know, that we must be God, because obviously we're more knowledgeable than anyone else ever was.
One of the aspects of that whole concept is they make the mistake of separating mankind from nature.
Yes.
As though we're not part of the creation. And so somehow or another, we're separate from anything else that happens down here. And anything we do is separate for analysis.
Yeah. Here's the other thing, though. It's almost a dichotomy, is they use fear to control the masses in such a way as like, why have we survived all these other global pandemics, all these other viruses that have been very fatal? Okay, they have thinned the herd, no doubt. But at the same time, we got by without doing the kinds of destruction of our own economies. You know?
Right.
So I think fear is being used to control, and yet they try to act like knowledge is almost our tyrant, you know? It controls us.
They suggest we can't control the pandemic, and yet hypocritically we can control the environment. And then when they say control the creation, but we can control, this is a problem with the feminists. They think that by disassociating the boys from their fathers, they can create and mold society away from whatever nature is into what they think it should be.
Right. And at the same time, while on the one hand they say they can't control the pandemic, on the other hand they're saying they totally can. That we as a people can, and it's like, no. I mean, no more than you can control the climate.
Right. What we're doing is working, and if you guys will continue to do what's right, it'll get dark this evening. So tonight you'll know if you're doing it.
Now. You know, we kind of got off, but I do need to go back to the Trace Act for a second, because I
tie in how the Trace thing and the Trace Act ties. How does it connect to the census? That's my
the Trace Act is going to ask you a bunch of questions, and that's what I wanted to get back to. The Trace Act is going to ask you a bunch of questions. The census asks you a bunch of questions. The thing is that you have a Fourth and Fifth Amendment right protections.
Okay.
And because you have those protections, the Fourth Amendment says you have the right to be secure in your person, papers, effects, and houses from unreasonable searches and seizures. You
Right.
have the Fifth Amendment, the right to remain silent, anything that could be used against you in a court of law. Well, the thing is, when government comes to your door, you don't know how they're going to use all of this information. And when they start asking you things that could be twisted around and used later against you in a court of law, you have every right to not answer. And so you should. You don't have to give them your phone. You don't have to let them in your house. You don't have to answer the door. They're probably not going to have any sort of a court order. And if they do, it's probably not legal, although they will probably enforce it as though it were. But my point is that, and we're going to need to see how this all plays out, but there are people, I know that the local National Guard is being trained to be put into effect. Governor Stitt here in Oklahoma has mobilized some of them to be some of these tracers.
Right.
And so they will be coming around, and they have sold out the Constitution for some of the things that they are asking.
Let me just say, Oldham again is talking about the Trace Act. On the census, which is a constitutional process, a good, patriotic, constitutional citizen will just give them the head count, which is required. Now, is this something new? No. I've been dealing with my family's genealogy, and I got on some of the online sites, and you can pull up records from censuses for, 100 years ago. Right. And in there, they were asking, what is your occupation? How much money do you make? Do you own your home? They were doing that then. And that was outside of the constitutional role of the census. So
the biggest difference between then and now is electronics. Now they can tie all that stuff together. They can put it with your cell phone. They can go and put that with your IRS records. They can and put that with, all sorts of things you don't know. If you're a parent, beware of the questions they ask, especially with the Trace Act, but even with the census, because now your kids are involved, and because there's been too much child kidnapping through DHS and the extortion under threat of child kidnapping, you have too much information out there, and we need less, not more, about us in the public record. And although they say it will remain not public, when they write your name on the form and then they input it, it's not anonymous.
Oldham, the public's not who I'm worried about. It's the government I'm worried about.
No. I mean, the public record is housed by the government. They're the ones that are going to be using it.
I don't mind my neighbors knowing things to say, keep an eye on my house when I'm gone, and who should be. I'm fine with that.
But I know you don't want them in all of your business.
Exactly, but there are things I'd gladly share with the neighbors in my neighborhood, but that doesn't mean the government in Washington needs to know it. You know, I feel much more comfortable with my neighbors whom I can see, who I'm not afraid of, sharing that with them. But I heard Tom, he enrolled his kids in school, and what do you know? He signed up for free lunches and didn't know it. Is that right, Tom?
Well, what I know is, eventually you find when you have as many kids as I do over as many decades as I do, you've done this before. And so they say, we tried to enroll kid number 2 at Edison. They're like, well, sign up for the free lunch program. We're like, look, we know we don't qualify. We're not going to, well, to enroll, you have to sign up for the free lunch program. I don't want to sign up. Literally, we had to get a special call from the Education Service Center to allow us to bypass the free lunch program request just to enroll in the free public school. 2 or 3 weeks later, we got a letter from the state that said, oh, you've been declined from your request for the free lunch program. Which
And that's it. They did it anyway.
That's right. It's ridiculous. And because the schools get paid on pieces of paper sent in, not on lunches served. So,
oh, yeah. The funding, the federal funding, that's one of the things they look at is how many kids are in the free lunch program. And they use that in their formula to say.
Every single one of them is the answer. They're all in it. Even if you say I don't want to be in it, they sign you up for it anyway. And notice how when the world comes to a halt, school cafeteria is still going.
I noticed. I did have some high school kids that we took to took down to the Capitol with us one day, and they were telling us those kinds of stories, how they were being pushed by the schools to go ahead and sign up. And I think some of these things, even without their parents' permission, just go ahead and sign up for it. And it was all a scam just to get the numbers on the books, even though the kids weren't using it.
Why in the heck would you continue to leave the cafeteria open, serving lunches to children who are not showing up? And the fact that my neighbors are all falling for it is the only reason I'm a pessimist since March 17th. This is ridiculous. My neighbors, and they all act like, oh, there's going to be a revolution and there's going to be all this. You know what? The people out there in California pretending that they're having a protest. Have you seen the protests in Hong Kong? You're having a party in California. When you guys start wearing helmets and gas masks, smoke, then you'll be protesting. You guys are having a party. This whole COVID thing has been nothing but a practice routine for the government. They've got everybody's name who said anything against it. They know where all the hot spots are going to be. This has been nothing but a practice routine. And like I said before, just like writing a laugh as a professional comedian, you wait until the laugh is over, then you tell your next joke. And that's what they've done with this. They kept us locked down as long as they could. And then they said, we'll lock down 2 weeks longer. And they just invested an extra little
right.
All they're waiting to do is see how long they can. And that's what they're playing the game for. So on COVID-20, you boys and girls better get ready to get your heads cracked open with some batons and wash down the sidewalk with the hoses like they did in '68.
Well, and I've been asked this. I was teaching another Zoom class, and I was asked if this is going to be Kent State or Martin Luther King or Crispus Attucks and the Boston Massacre, if that's what was coming. And I will tell you, if they do this again come the fall, yes, I believe it will. I was talking to a nail, somebody who does nails, and a friend of mine, and she hasn't been able to work this entire time because the salon she works at, although she's a private contractor, the salon she works at is owned by somebody else, and that person was lock, stock, and barrel into the whole thing and would not open.
Right.
So she didn't have a way to open. I don't know if she did anything under the table. I haven't asked her. But she is ready, because I said this, the next time they do this, day one, we hit the streets. She said, I'm with you. Absolutely, she will not go through it again. And we're seeing that, and this kind of ties into another story that I wanted to mention, and that is New Jersey.
Preset. Yeah.
New Jersey. You want to do your set, and then we can get back into that?
I was just totally enamored with what you were talking about there. It's so true. I am so pessimistic. I sure hope everybody's fired up, but I mean, you're not going to be able to walk out there in a bikini and have a protest. You better get your helmet on, because they're going to be knocking your head into the ground. And I think we're all going to run scared like children. Tommy McCay, right? That's because I'm a pessimist. I was not always. Tommy McCay here on Facebook Live with 3D Politics Live. I appreciate you guys pulling me out of the trance I was in there. Right in the middle of it, I got David Van and David Oldham here talking about all the important stuff. Go on, Oldham, with what you were teaching us.
Well, and you know, in New Jersey, Van's got the picture pulled up for us here. The Attilas Gym in Belmar, New Jersey, came out end of last week and said he would be opening opening this morning.
Yep.
Over the weekend, at least 2 other gym owners said they would be opening their gyms in their cities. So we had 3 cities at least in New Jersey who were following the Shelley Luther model of opening her salon in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And brought Texas around. And now we're seeing New Jersey, and we're seeing some brave guys come out and do that. And so what we haven't seen is, I haven't seen the news. I've been so busy.
Okay, Oldham.
The news.
Let me just explain the caption because the font is a little bit small here.
I can't even read it.
I want to set up the scene. Okay. The officer wearing the black jacket in the middle did something I thought was classy of a career police officer. He said, you know, he greeted the crowd. He says, you know, we're all doing our best to get by and hopefully we'll be, you know, it'll all turn out good. He says, finally, you are all in violation of an executive order. And, you know, some people grumbled. He held his hand up, you know, and they quieted down. And then another lay spoke. He says, let me finish. He says, on that note, have a good day. And he turned around and walked away.
And that is how a police officer should react.
Yes, yes.
And
so, you know, and this kind of thing we've seen in other towns. For instance, on your last topic about the Trace Act, and there have been restaurants being ordered by municipalities that you can't open your dining room unless you take a census of everybody who eats there, and they got to fill out their email, their address, their phone number, all that stuff. So you can turn around and give it to the government. And restaurants have said, no, we're not doing that. And you know what? At least one municipality announced today, okay, we're backing off.
Well, and that's exactly what happened in Stillwater when stores were requiring masks and requiring things, and the people got so upset that they were threatening the workers, the employees, and that the municipality had to back off. And that goes into my next point. I don't know if you've seen the videos I put up of the Seattle police officer who came out and is now on suspension, awaiting termination for having put out that the police response to the COVID and everything, to all these executive orders, is unconstitutional. And he went into good detail about it. Mm-hmm. Well, at first, his department was for him about the whole thing. And he was calling on his brother police officers to not go where the orders were taking them, that they had to do a gut check, much like the Marine in California was telling the police officers. But this was a fellow police officer. And, well, within a few hours of it going out and starting to go viral, because it went viral really fast, he was called into the office and put on suspension. Mm-hmm. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, he put it out at like 5 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock in the morning, I think he was suspended. Okay,
let me say something on that, Oldham. I understand the legislature took up a bill and passed it, sent it on to the governor, that's going to prohibit municipalities from adding extra emergency restrictions on people's behavior in this. Is that, you're saying yes?
I believe that was passed. I wasn't that familiar with the order, but Kevin West, it was Kevin West.
My point on this is that that's truly a double-edged sword, because going back to your example there in Washington State, the state is controlled by liberals. However, you get on the east side of the mountains there, and that's a very conservative state.
Exactly.
And the opposite can be very true, where you get mayors in municipalities on the east side, on the Idaho border, you know, who are just saying, no, we're not having any of this. And so it kind of works both ways. You know,
Well, I think I'm missing your point a little bit. I'm not.
What I'm saying is, what we had here was state action last week to prohibit the kind of draconian, tyrannical extra measures of the municipalities, like City of Norman, City of Guthrie, Veneta, Bristow, you know, Altus. So we're saying, no, municipality, we're going to rein in on your ability to do that. On the other side of it, you've got in Washington, where you've got municipalities that are more liberty-minded, saying we're not going to do this, and the heavy hand of liberal government or tyrannical government is forcing them.
Well, again, they don't have to do it, and that's the point.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the police officer's point. I tell the Seattle story to say this. In his video, he said there aren't enough of us to keep back the hordes if you get them mad enough.
Yes.
If the police continue this behavior, there are not enough police to hold back the mass. And that was his warning. It's like, wake up, guys. You are going to awaken the sleeping giant, and you are not going to like what is coming. Mm-hmm. And that is what I think people need to realize, is that we need, well, I mean, my flag behind me is we need people standing up for, you know, the thin line of the Constitution. You know, the good cities, like we have, you know, the city of Dunkirk and
Newkirk,
excuse me.
Yeah.
We have good cities. We have good people who want to do the right thing. But then for whatever reason, whatever motivates them, they do all of the wrong things.
Yeah. I have a problem going either way on this. And I'll use it as an example. About 3-4 years ago, State Representative Jason Murphy was very frustrated with the legislature passing a bill that prohibited municipalities from putting local restrictions on some of the petroleum injection well activity that was causing horrible property damage and structural damage in Jason Murphy's Logan County district. And they passed a law, and this was to protect the petroleum industry, you know, against some localities saying you can't do that. It ended up, you know, we pushed the Corporation Commission into finally acting, but they drug their feet. You know, and politics and money played a role there. And Jason and I were talking, and I said, you know, I guess that kind of sounds like the county burn bans you might have, where, you know, your county decides, hey, the weather conditions are just right. Man, we could have a real problem here. We're going to limit, you know, people's ability just to have big brush fires, you know, in these conditions. And, you know, you don't have to go to Governor Fallon to put that county burn ban in, but yet they're putting that restriction on petroleum, you know, on the communities. In that same way here, we passed a bill this last week, went to a floor vote, saying that Guthrie and, you know, and Bristow and Norman, we're not going to let you have those kind of emergency powers.
Well, and here's the problem, is they are trying to legislate what the Constitution already says. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was actually done the wrong way. What it should have been, because remember, these emergency powers were illegal, every single one of them, because they violated individual rights.
Confusion through redundancy. They're rewriting stuff that's already written, and it confuses everything.
Well, and what it does is it legitimizes what they have done already. The illegality that they have committed, they've said, Well, just not next time. Right. No, these people deserve prison for what they've done this time around. But whether or not that's going to happen, that will remain to be seen. But the point is that they never had that authority. What they should be doing is ascribing punishments for if they do it, because probably the punishments weren't clear enough, weren't subscribed appropriate to put the teeth to the Constitution to keep them from ever going there.
One of the things that I think we're experiencing in today's, milquetoast society, thanks to the watered down relations of men and women since the great society of LBJ, you go to a jury duty and they discuss a lot of things about the law and if somebody is guilty or not. And it's a lot of stuff. And do you understand? And then they talk about, if you find somebody guilty, they ask us an entire series of questions in jury duty. If the guy is clearly guilty and he's guilty, would you be able to pull the trigger on sentencing? It's an entire question. When he's wrong, when he did bad and everybody knows it, are you still also the person that can say yes, and he also needs punishment? That's an entire another skill set. And this is the problem we have in today's society. We got 1 million rules and 1,000 police state concepts. And what we should do, ain't nobody gonna pull the trigger and actually enforce the law unless it's on a plebe or a proletariat. Where is the 1-800 number on a billboard that says, turn in a crooked politician, turn in a crooked cop?
Well, we just don't have the money to put it up.
Why aren't the taxpayers' money being used to help turn in the crooked politicians?
I agree.
Okay, so we spend money to turn in our citizens. We spend money on our own citizens. G.T. Bynum hiring social ambassadors through the Rockefeller Center, which I didn't vote for anybody in the Rockefeller Center. Rockefeller Foundation.
Well, go ahead.
Foundation, not Center. Rockefeller Center's.
We need to cover some other stories tonight.
Well, before we get off of this, though, you bring up a great point. One of the problems is with juries is the very questioning that you laid out, Tom, because what they do is they use that to seat an invalid jury, not a jury of constitutionally valid jurors, but ones who are willing to punish somebody for a non-crime that is being called a crime. And they use that very, very question process that you laid out.
Yeah, they lay it up and pick them out very carefully. If you're just tuning in, once again, Tommy McCay here with 3D Politics Live. And I've got David Oldham with me always every Monday on 3D Politics right here on Facebook. Van, do you want to do state legislature update?
Well, if we could hold up, I wanted to get to Alan Keyes' event tomorrow night with, pardon me?
Do that.
Okay, let's share a screen. Now, I'm going to show you guys a video that went out over 20 years ago. It was the 2000 Republican presidential primary debate up in Iowa. And I tell you what, we had Alan Keyes stole the show in 45 seconds. And I'm going to show you guys that video right now. I know we're going to start with the mugshot of John McCain in his prime. They're talking about the income tax, and McCain wanted one rate, and Bush wanted another, and Alan Keyes responded to them both.
I made a deal with you that I was going to give you a preemptive claim to a certain percentage of my income determined by you. How much of my money would you control? All of it. You're right. That's the principle of the income tax. Now, when I work or you work and somebody else controls 100% of the fruits of our labor, what do we call that? Slavery. The simple logic of the income tax is that it's a slave tax. These gentlemen argue about whether the chains should be lighter, whether they should be heavier. I think it's time that as a tax-enslaved people, we rise up and make it clear. We want the chains off, abolish the income tax, and return to our original Constitution of Liberty.
Mr. Bauer.
All right.
The income tax by gradient and progressive scale is the same thing as the 3/5 argument in the original argument of the Constitution discussing slaves. It's like you're just going to gradient scale how much of a slave you are. That's all.
Well, not exactly, but
Never exactly. That's my
yeah, it wasn't quite that way, but yeah, I mean, there's nothing lawful about the progressive income tax.
Well, it's
No,
constitutional.
certainly.
not the progressive part, but the income tax is. Let's just share with everybody what the 16th Amendment says real quick, because it gives us a basis of what we're talking about. It says the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. That's the 16th Amendment.
Okay. Now let's talk about that in the. I'm sorry, Tom. I missed you. Say that again.
I was just saying, being smart, Alec. The
Okay.
translated, what that means is they can take anything they want for any reason they want with no recompense.
No, that was not in there, Tom.
Oh,
That
let
they
me
can
just
do
say
anything
this.
they want for whatever they want.
Okay, but we got to look at it in context.
Okay.
Up until that point, the Constitution specifically said it is illegal, it is unconstitutional for the federal government to levy any tax on the individual citizen. It
Correct.
was the taxes were, or the federal government was to be funded through tariffs and duties, and then by census, a bill was sent to each state proportionate to their population.
Correct.
And so what they did in the 16th Amendment is they wiped out that part that said you can't have an income tax and said, yeah, you can. However, they sold it to us this way. It's only going to be a tax on millionaires and billionaires.
The top 1%.
Yeah.
Another reason not to want to be a millionaire or a billionaire.
I'm telling you, they're the only ones not paying the kind of taxes that the middle class has to pay.
Well, let's put it this way. Henry Ford paid his workers $25 a week in gold. Just in gold. There were no income taxes on it. If you add up what that adds up to now, that was basically 1.5 ounces of gold a week. That's roughly what, about $3,500 a week.
I haven't been buying gold lately. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I don't know what it's selling for right at the moment. But the point is that at that point, at this point, it's like 1.5 ounces of gold, or 1.25 ounces of gold. And so he was paying that amount out every single week, and there was no income tax. It was abject fortune in today's standards. So the thing is that we now have people making, I mean, even though the numbers are greater, making much less than what Henry Ford was doing, but paying up to half of their income out back to the government.
Okay, I brought this up in the context, in the 2nd congressional district race, of all people, the Libertarian candidate, Richie Castaldo, has an event tomorrow night with Alan Keyes, and it's on this very issue. And I know it was last minute, and Richie, I'm sorry, I tried to get a hold of you last minute to have you come on tonight to talk about it. But I think it's a valid issue. And Tom, I talked to the state party chair of the Libertarian Party today, Chad Williams.
Yeah.
And I said, Chad, could you fill in? And he said, man, I've got a meeting. I've got to be on a conference call from 7 till midnight, with the state or with the National Libertarian Party. But I congratulated them on this. I said, the Republicans in Oklahoma are largely giving up the battle on fighting against tax increases and tax reform. And I said, I'm glad to see the Libertarians picking it up, because I think it is a bread and butter issue that is going to speak to the masses. I tried with the Libertarians about 4 years ago to get them to help fight these tax increases in the legislature. And the bunch they had running the Libertarian Party then wasn't comfortable with doing that, but they would march in every gay pride parade they could.
Right.
Yeah. I've not have found any luck with the Libertarian Party. They're so it's totally subjective. It leads me into the UBI discussion. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I just, I'm going to give credit where credit's due here. Richie Castaldo is bringing up this as a bread and butter issue. The state party leadership, you talked to Rex Lawhorn a few months ago about that very thing, and I'm glad to see them coming around to doing the job the Republicans used to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, anybody says the truth, it's true. Doesn't matter what group it's coming from.
Yeah.
If it's true, it's true.
Yeah. Now, Oldham has a lot to say about the state legislature too. I can't wait to hear about that.
What about, are you talking about the updates on the Oklahoma State Legislature?
Oh, he's got a lot.
Yeah, we've got a lot that happened on Friday, but
Okay.
we should get into your UBI question because that's germane to this whole discussion.
Yeah, you want
Just- Before we go there, though, you mentioned something that is a widely believed and I think needs to be addressed, and that is that the 16th Amendment does not allow the federal government to tax for whatever they want.
Mhm.
The Bill of Rights still limits them, and the 10th Amendment still limits what they can spend their money on, because
Yeah.
if they are not granted specific powers by the Constitution, or if they are specifically deprived of certain powers
Yep.
by the Bill of Rights, for instance, then they cannot spend on it. So when we're talking about Medicaid expansion, most of
Mhm.
which comes from the federal government, there is no allowance within the Constitution for the federal government to be spending anything on healthcare
Yeah.
whatsoever, or dictating anything about healthcare.
Right.
So therefore, they cannot be charging us
Gotcha.
it, and it's illegal for the state to be receiving that federal money and doing the same, because the Fifth Amendment protects us from being taxed for those things.
Okay.
We've lost that thought process, so we need to rebuild it.
That's why there's no enforcement at the state level. So the feds just roll.
Well, actually, they're in cahoots, because the states look at it as free money that they do not have to pay a political price for it. That's why you saw during the whole bathroom debacle, where the men wanted to use the women's bathroom, claiming they were trans and all of this, right? What happened was the governors wanted to put it off to the federal government so that they didn't have to pay a political price one way or the other. And so
Gotcha.
they wanted to put it off to someone else. And you see this with COVID. They always point to somebody else. They're always pointing to the CDC recommendations, even though there's only recommendations and these guys are giving orders. They always want to point somewhere else rather than themselves, get the onus off themselves.
Well,
As long as we understand their game, we can start calling them on it.
that was my problem with GT here in Tulsa, was that, I didn't vote for him to tell me what Washington said to do. And he couldn't even present it to Tulsa as, hey, as your mayor, here's what I decided. And it just so happens to also line up with what the CDC says. What he said was, come on, everybody, let's just bow down to the national. Thank God for our founding fathers with their Federation of States instead of a national Carthage type outfit, or we'd be long done by now.
Wait a minute, but GT's going to get us some really hot new police cars.
This is actually breaking news in my mind. I just woke up to a dream. This just handed to me. GT Bynum working in conjunction with the Tulsa Police Department and other citizen artists have used the iconic 3D Politics logo on the new police department cars. And they're not going to go out on the cheap version of those Buick pieces of crap. They're going on the high dollar Tesla scooters that go like that. Boom.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Going to talk UBI.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. I got into a Twitter spat about UBI because I suggested it was totally socialism and Marxism all the way around. The key word being universal is the first thing, basic and then income. And of course, what they talk about, income, this and that. And my first, being the semanticist, this is why I ran for mayor in the first place, is because the mayor at the time couldn't even use proper meaning of words. And income means something you earn, but this would be universal basic allowance because you're not really creating an income, you're getting an allowance. And then I found out through this Facebook spat that this guy wasn't even promoting it as a government thing, because I kept saying universal from government means it's going to be a Marxist thing. Oh no, this could be delivered by the church, he said, or a GoFundMe crowdsourcing or anything. I'm like, well, okay, you're just coming up with a group. Then it's clearly not universal. So it's not income, not universal. And then later he started telling me, well, this money wouldn't be meant to cover basic income. It would be meant to, and I was like, well, it's not even basic. So it's not universal. It's not basic. It's not income.
Yeah.
And apparently Andrew Yang has a thing that's tied to they all Thomas Jefferson, the agrarian justice, which is literally socialism and tribal. So what do you know about universal basic income?
Let me explain my meme here. It's I wrote an article last week on this, and I thought, have we done this before? And so what you're looking at in this picture here is a bunch of people picking cotton in a cotton field. If that doesn't bring back visions of the slavery of the South. Well, when they were bringing slaves over 400 years ago, it was basically they were offering them universal basic income. Not only are we going to provide you food, we're going to provide you free rent. We take care of your health care, and we guarantee you a job.
Because we got cotton that got to get picked.
Yeah, and I mean, that was universal basic income, right?
Even the Tuskegee Airmen were sold free health care from the government. Boom.
So that's what that meme, it probably doesn't come across real good on this postage stamp screen.
You could full screen it to give them a good picture of it. But yeah, the whole concept of universal basic income from the people who are pushing it, when I started screaming about the bureaucracy, etc., he was saying, well, it wouldn't even, this limits and streamlines the bureaucracy because it would be automated. I'm like, well, like get rid of, as though automation gets rid of the corruption. So there you go.
Or the government.
Right. But he was saying, well, it didn't even have to be run by the government. Even the church, he said, could run it. I'm like, here are people crying out for theocracy.
Well, I mean, he's saying it doesn't have to be run by the government, but Connecticut just announced a non-government corporation that's going to be running a lot of their compliance stuff that they're trying to set up to force on the people.
Right.
They've given them $2 million on a no bid contract that they're going to burn through in about 8 weeks. And I don't remember even what the details were, but the point is that it's still government. They're acting as a government actor. They're just not government directly.
That's kind of the most amazing thing about it was that the Marxist is such a hybrid beast, such a viral hybrid beast that it'll alter itself anyway just to fulfill its group effort.
Well, remember, they're not a hybrid beast. They are a lying beast who lies about their position at every turn and will lie any which way to get to move what they want, but they're still headed the same direction.
Right.
But remember that what universal basic income really is Marxism. And so therefore, what you have is you have the government inserting itself as not the umpire in a contractual situation, but the dictator of the contractual situation between an employer and the employee, taking away both the rights of the employer and the employee. That's important to note. The employees don't have a say any longer to market themselves the best they can.
Right. Right. Hey, if you're just tuning in, I am Tommy McCay here with David Van and David Oldham on 3D Politics Live on Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. I know we got a little bit more to talk about before we go on, so we'll do another segment. You know, one of the things a friend of mine was talking to me about how America seems to always come along and take whatever the world has and then Americanize it. And whatever they do, it's kind of like English is a great example of English as a language. It kind of takes all the other languages and just smashes them together and then, you know, Englishizes it. And that's what we do in America. And so we were discussing, you know, the horrible fascistic government of G.T. Bynum, and then the horrible communism that's the globalist communism that's coming along the way. And my friend was saying, you know, the funny thing about America is we've really Americanized whatever that nasty hybrid is that you're talking about, and we need a name for it. So I came up with one. It's called NIFCA. It's NFCA, and it's Neo-Fascistic Communaria Americana. Notice there's no ism, purposely no ism in there. It's NFCA. It's Neo-Fascistic it's Communaria Americana.
Communaria.
Is that your next campaign platform, Tom?
What is we've taken like GT.
I think Tom's next campaign slogan. In fact, I think he should change parties and it should be the rent is too damn high.
There you go. Tom, I hear you're your own campaign manager.
It's kind of scary.
It shows.
I also represent myself in court.
And you know what they say about that.
No, never heard that. But the thing is, though, friends, we live in G.T. Bynum is a perfect example of how we look at him as some sort of a nonpartisan type of, you know, middle of the road moderate, when really he's delivering up these neo-fascistic communaria Americana is what he's delivering.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree completely.
I want to know, Oldham, you were at the Capitol last week. Is the honeymoon over, or Stitt still having his honeymoon with the legislature?
Well, I think they like him. I mean, I didn't hear any problems with Stitt. Actually, what was amazing was how smooth things seemed to run all day long, other than a couple of hiccups that I was there working on, and things were running pretty smoothly until about 5:30, and then it seemed like the children got hungry and tired, and everything started falling apart.
Well, yeah, but I think you're looking at a different context. You're watching the floor vote in each chamber. I'm talking about these three fellas here in the front row. You know, as you've got Treat and Stitt and McCall.
Right.
And Stitt had something done to him this year that hasn't been done in all the years I remember being in Oklahoma. No governor has had his veto of the state budget overruled.
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
is
diss.
huge. And that goes right into the 75%, you know, just 2 years ago, the giant tax increase that many of these people voted for, and the new ones all were voted in to make sure happened again. So you know, I see this as a, you know, Governor Sitt has been against a rock and a hard place, kind of, because these people are willing to go and do egregious things when he's trying to make good substantive changes, and they're not willing to go for it. It's enough to drive you a little bit batty.
Yeah.
So
but
I did not see much of that on Friday, but I know that it's in the background. And you teased it at the beginning. They finished their work 2 weeks early. Okay, with the whole coronavirus thing.
Yeah.
They ended up tabling most of their calendars. Okay,
That's probably a good thing, right?
A lot of it was really good, and because most of it, just needed to be tabled. Frankly, I wish they would only meet probably once every 4 years, just because so much needs to be tabled. But the point is that they because they tabled so much, and they basically took out all the policy stuff for the most part and just tabled it, which means that it's going to have to start fresh because they're going to start a new legislature this next year. So they're going to have to start everything brand spanking new
and down the road.
And but the point is, because they cut so much, they ended up ending 2 weeks early. Now, the Oklahoma Constitution says that they are required to sine die or end their session on the last Friday of May.
By the last Friday of May.
By the last Friday of May. They can finish early. But what they did was they ended up adjourning to the call of the chair without sine die. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that if the governor were to veto any of these bills that they want to see come into effect. Now, he could, if they had sine died, he could pocket veto the bills.
Right.
As long as they remain in session, he has to physically veto the bills. In other words, he has to actually put a veto on it. There's no pocket veto while they remain in session. But he has 10 days to sign the bills, or they automatically go into effect as long as they remain in session.
10 business days.
Is it 10 business days?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's why they did a full 2 weeks.
Okay. So here's the point, is that should he issue a veto, they can automatically come back into session and revisit the bills that they want to override. If they had sine died, then they're done. There is no override. They would actually have to come back into special session in order to override his veto. And I don't know that they could even do that.
Well, they could. It's hard.
I think they would actually have to come back into special session to revisit brand spanking new language. Anyway, go ahead.
When you say sine die, that conjures up all sorts of weird things.
Right. It is Latin, and I can't remember what it actually stands for.
And we've Americanized it too. It's sine die is actually the proper pronunciation, and it means until a certain date.
Okay.
That's all it means. So it's all ambiguous.
Well, what it means is until the next session, basically.
Yeah.
And so what they have done is adjourned to the call of the chair, so that the chair can automatically call everybody back into session. They can all show up, take a vote, and override the governor.
Yes. Now
they finished a lot of business on Friday.
Now, I want to say they continued the proxy voting, and to me, it's questionable. I think that was only supposed to be during an emergency, so maybe they're declaring themselves still under emergency.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
They were acting that way, and some people were. The Senate especially had people on Zoom. The House did not, but the Senate was actually taking votes on Zoom. They had it come up on the separate screen, and you could see everybody casting their votes.
And for security purposes, I like that. Yeah, I know the Republicans of the first district had their convention, and I believe that was audio only. Here we are on Zoom, and we know who's talking. You can see their lips move, right? I appreciate the Senate at least having that level of visual identification.
The Tulsa City Council back in the 90s, I learned when I argued with them, they would pass a lot of legislation under the emergency clause, even though there was no emergency going on. But so once I saw all these things like the municipality retirement fund, I'm like, how could a retirement fund for municipal employees be an emergency? Well, it was.
Because it takes effect 6 months earlier than the non-emergency.
It doesn't wait.
Yeah. And
somebody had to hurry up and retire. Yeah, Van.
It prohibits people who want to do an a veto referendum. It's a lot hard. I don't think you can even do a veto referendum on that.
On an emergency. Once it becomes an emergency, it's like, oh no, this is too important.
Yeah.
And again, the problem is so many of these bills are illegal, but now they're emergencies. So, and then everything conspires that you don't actually end up having any redress, any proper redress of grievance. Because, you can't fight it.
We hit another 15-minute mark. Here we are again, 3D Politics Live. Tommy McCay here. 3D Politics. I got David Van from SoonerPolitics.org and David Oldham from ConstitutionalGrounds.com. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. And I got to say, when you talk about an emergency, one of the things that's really lit me up recently is this commercial broadcast on PBS or NPR. I mean, just the other day on KWGS, they're replaying trash audio, in my opinion, audio from The View. Why is KWGS, National Public Radio, replaying commercial broadcast stuff?
Are they doing the whole broadcast?
Oh, they're playing clips from The View.
Oh, well.
Their narrative. But what I'm saying is, this leads me to the bigger argument. Why in the world does KWGS and NPR get federal funds? They're already brought to you by these advertisers that are not like me, people who donate to NPR who are not like me, people just like not me who give to NPR. And every time I listen to NPR or watch OETA, it's always brought to me by an advertiser. It's never just there. It's always there by advertisers like not me.
But Tom, those are not advertisements. Those are sponsorship spots.
It's not tax.
Even though they're brought to you by a corporation or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who has corporate interests.
It's a contribution. It's not a taxation, right?
Well, the thing is, it's to get their name out there. That's why they do it.
There's literally no reason why federal dollars should be going to NPR, KWGS, or the rest of them when they already have advertisers. Now, you can make a claim, like for Clear Channel Communications. There was a time when we didn't have all these other systems where if there was a national emergency, we needed to be able to tune in case of like War of the Worlds. If the Martians are actually invading, we need to tune into KRMG and get an update every 6 minutes on, what the Martians are doing. And that's in an emergency.
If you're going to talk something like you mentioned, if there's some military purpose for it, a proper purpose. The emergency alert system or whatever they call that. Where you get the tone late at night.
Right.
Or we get them for in the middle of the day when we've got a tornado coming. That's a legitimate government
Right.
spend to spend on those companies who are providing this service.
How can Joy Behar be a national?
Well,
I don't need to suddenly hear from Joy Behar.
well, the thing is that, remember, that works out to charity, and charity is never lawful for government to engage in.
Why they call it eleemosynary, Oldham? They don't call it charity.
Well, eleemosynary is government is never allowed eleemosynary spending.
It's the
Because
same argument I had with the idiot on UBI. Oh, charity. It's like, that's why there's two words. It's because forced charity by government is called eleemosynary spending.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys this. The FCC does require, in order for you to keep your local broadcasting license, you have to serve the community where you're listed in, providing community service. But they get to fill that up with things like your Smokey Bear, be careful with matches stuff, and provide local news coverage, provide local community interest things. I want to tell you, back in 2012, I became one of the top recipients of this when we had two very strong talk radio stations. You had KRMG, the granddaddy here, and then you had KFAQ, which at that time was only about 10 years old. Anyway, I was in charge of Rick Santorum's campaign, and the ORU College Republicans wanted him on campus. So Matt Pinnell helped make it happen. He didn't, he just did his job as state party leader, to connect people and stuff. And so I show up there, and at first they had 250 seats set up for us. This was 2 days out. And then the next day, so, okay, we'll go to the baby, maybe we'll have maybe 500. And then KRMG and KFAQ got wind of it. And they pulled this little fancy thing saying, hey, we're providing free admission to it, even though there were no tickets. They're acting like, look what we're doing. And so they outdid each other. And the next day, I didn't even want to show up because I thought they're only going to allow us 500 seats. And I know we're going to have over 1,000. All of a sudden, the dean, who told me the day before, he says, I don't want to see your face here until an hour before the event. You're only here because the college Republicans asked you to be, because they didn't want any politicking going on. Because this was a town hall meeting, not a campaign event, they were able to open it to the public. It didn't cost the candidate a dime. It wasn't even listed as an in-kind donation by the university. And we had 5,000 people show up. It was the biggest campaign event. And you know who got the credit for it? Moi.
Oh,
I'm not kidding. The national campaign was just, it blew their minds, And so they said, well, tell us how you did it. And I said, guys, I'll be honest with you. I was the student here. And I said, the coolest thing about this event was it cost us one rental car from Oklahoma City to Tulsa. That was it. So they had me write a paper on how to do it, and they duplicated my format in a bunch of other states. Right. Again, because you're doing it as a community service town hall, you can use that in the talk radio station, get to use it to meet their requirements for re-upping their license.
So we need to get back to the legislature thing.
Oh, that was a great story. Come on, man.
No. In the meantime, I've got a question. That is, can we use that for some of our messaging that, that clearly is community service, liberty and the law and order message that we have.
Oldham, Freedom Works has a 501c3 and they have a 501c4.
Okay, right.
And the same is true of a number of OCPA has a companion educational only. And there are certain things they can do through their nonprofit educational foundation that is non-political, non-advocacy. So that's how you separate those two out.
So I got, we need to bring up for another time and a topic of a teaser for another show, this idea of nonprofit organizations, and specifically nonprofit organizations at a time when the nation is in debt. I can understand you have excess profit. And if you have excess money, then you can invest your excess money in philanthropic organizations.
But you know what, Tom? If you repeal the 16th Amendment, it's a moot point.
Right, because the money is ours anyway. They are taking it currently. They're taking it illegally, even though they have the 16th Amendment. We are entitled to that money. It's ours. The government doesn't have any right to it.
Right, but if you have to be licensed to get your money back, aren't you just feeding the need of the beast? I mean, it's like,
remember, every licensing scheme is just that. It's illegal.
5013C status and maintain all your words so you don't lose it.
Well, again, we get into the spaghetti mess of these illegal schemes that they have, because the tax bill you are issued is illegal. Why? Because it has things in it that you are paying for that the government doesn't have the right to charge you for.
Yeah.
So therefore, thereby the loopholes that they then also offer are all screwed up, and the whole thing becomes a big mess because it started out improperly. We've got to go back and refix that.
man,
Yeah, all these licensing schemes is a way of picking the winners and losers. And I'll tell you, even though we don't license the so-called press, I don't believe there is such an entity constitutionally as the press.
No.
When the First Amendment referred to the press, it referred to a machine which we all have a right to use. And I say in this context, when the White House decides who gets to go to the press conference and ask a question of the president, that's the president picking winners and losers. Or what happened to us.
He's also got a limited space to put people.
Or you take a look at the situation. Remember Oldham last month? We were going to go to the Capitol, but we couldn't get in there unless the speaker gave us special sanction as the press.
Supposedly.
Right.
I was going to go anyway, but.
So, yeah, but what's happening here? They're picking the winners and losers. Because all of a sudden, if the Jinx Neighborhood News doesn't get in, but Tulsa World does, then they're picking the winners and losers.
Exactly. Well, and that's the look at essential versus non-essential. I mean, who's non-essential and who has the right to say that you're non-essential? I mean, that's just ludicrous, and that should make every non-essential person rise up in arms.
Who's non-essential, right? I mean, that's just in last week. Like, let's give a shout out to the zeros. The people who you don't know that even a hero can sing off key. And I've heard.
I got a couple of updates. First of all, in the 5th District, that's Oklahoma City area, and then over in Shawnee, congressional Republicans. The Republican district chair has decided he's only going to pick 4 of the 7, 8, 9 candidates who get to be at this forum that's sanctioned by the party.
Okay.
And he's using as a criteria who's raised the most money in campaign contributions.
Wow.
Picking the winners and losers.
I always work in the Ray and Mayor's race.
Yeah, or you could do like Oldham and I were part of a couple years ago, is some Republican auxiliary organizations and conservative groups, the 912, Republican Men's Club of Tulsa County, and then Republican Assembly, which Oldham and I were officers in. We put on our own. And I want to say that to the people, the grassroots over there in Oklahoma City, you don't like what the first district OKGOP has done, organize your own event. Contact these people and say, come on out. All right. I'm disappointed in that. But that's being planned.
You mean in the 5th district?
5th district.
5th district. Right.
Right. Again, that's their race. They're going to try to get back that seat from Kendra Horn, the lone Democrat. So that's coming up here in the next week or two. We're going to have some developments on that. I think in the next weeks to come, we've got to start showcasing some of these races. I got a big push poll yesterday in the race to replace Senator Stanislawski's tournament out. There's some big money going into that race. David D'Ambroso's got a big candidate over there in West Tulsa and Jinx and Sand Springs in that district. That's going to be races to watch. I think we need to start talking about some of these races to watch. And then we got people trying to go back who got voted out 2 years ago. George Fott, Steve Copeland. So I think we've got races coming up. I want people to, buckle in here. There's a lot going to happen next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I got about 3 more comments before we roll out of here. And one of the things I want to talk about is the locally, the courthouse is opening up, the courtroom is opening up, and they're talking about the way that we're going to deal with you as you come in. You're going to have a mask and such, and as I'll do sometimes to reach way out in the stratosphere and make connections that nobody else does. Remember equal access, equal time on the radio? Remember that thing? That equal access law? So my attitude about wearing a mask, because they've driven this division in us, another way to separate us before they conquer us. And so I say, look, okay, it's a new world. I'll agree with you there. COVID-19 is a new thing. And so I'm going to take extra precautions. I'm going to do my hand washing distance. I'm going to social distance. I'm going to take 17 different new ways I never did before to calculate this new world, but I'm not going to wear a mask. Well, so now all of a sudden they say, well, that's not good enough. See, because I'm not doing it the way they want to. So I'm asking for equal time, because we're really not talking about science. We're talking about subjective control. Van, you said a couple of weeks ago, I can't catch something from somebody in Germany that I've never next to. And that's not science, my friend. That's control. Everybody knows you're right, because if you control like a tyrant everything, then you're right. You can control away. That's not science. Science says, what? I'll go in, and if you're wearing a mask and it works, if masks work, you're protected, even if I'm not wearing
it. And there's
what I'm talking about, to end my little rant, equal time. If we're going to do a representation equally at the courthouse, there are some people think that a mask is the extent that you need to go through. I say I don't need a mask. Let's just have equal time. Some people don't have to. Some people do.
Well, remember, we started out with that. Remember, we have freedom. If you don't like my freedom, you can protect yourself from me.
Yeah.
And so you can wear all the PPE you want. You have that right. I have the right to go without. And you don't have the right to say without any proof whatsoever that I am somehow infecting you and causing you some harm. That you don't get to do.
What do you got?
The state district courts, which answer to the state Supreme Court, are claiming jurisdiction over the entirety of the building of these county courthouses. Well, they're county offices. And I wish that we could see some county commissioners take back control of their building and let the state district court manage the courtrooms that they're holding court in, and that's it.
Right.
And the buck stops with the county commissioners when you're trying to go down to get your land records, or you're trying to, go down and deal with whatever county offices are
Right.
held in that same building. So, by the way, yeah, I think is it the May 20th is the first date, or is it tomorrow's first day of court? But
I don't know, but if they're getting ready to open up,
I got a court update. Dean Davis does have a court hearing on Wednesday. Don't know if they're just going to keep playing this, moving it on. Dean was able to get documents sealed, and so most of us think that's probably medical records, him showing a medical cause for his deportment on the night he was arrested, supposedly for DUI. We'll see where we're at on that. So stay tuned on there.
I saw him at the Capitol the other day, and he seemed in good spirits.
Oh, Dean's doing great. Yeah.
And so he seemed good. We never did finish the court updates. There were some important bills that passed on Friday. So the medical marijuana bill got passed, ended up going to the governor's desk. There was a right to life abortion bill, or anti-abortion bill, that passed and went to the governor's desk. This is the key one that people need to know, and that is the HJR 1040 passed the House on Thursday, got to the Senate on Friday, needed a 3 legislative day turnaround time in order to pass. HJR 1040 was the override omnibus of all of the bad agency rule changes, in which was some rules for the Corporation Commission, but the real bad ones were the hurdles that the state health department was going to put for parents who wanted to exercise their right to exempt their children from vaccines.
Right.
So now they want to force people to go and watch a video and all of that sort of malarkey. Because the veto, the way that the legislature weirdly is set up, right at the moment, the way the laws and rules are set up, they have to veto rules. Every other rule that they don't veto automatically takes effect.
brilliant.
HJR 1040 ended up going through 3 different iterations because of the fact that they weren't going to be in session for the 3 legislative days. So people from both houses were working to get it done. I think it was really something they wanted to get done, was this omnibus veto. It went through to the medical marijuana bill was just going to be an amendment added to that. Something fell apart in the Republican caucus, and they came out and said, that's not going to happen. And I don't know what happened, but something happened there. And I know that the medical marijuana people were not happy. At some point, we heard lots of talk about that. And then, and why, I don't know. So I don't know if we have a bone to pick with them, but ultimately it ended up not getting heard in the Senate and ended up dying after being.
Wait a minute. You're not talking about medical marijuana. You're talking about the agency rules.
The agency rules omnibus veto ended up not getting heard in the Senate. So the rules will pass. There's a problem.
Not yet.
Well, they will pass unless some miracle they come back into session and we'll hear it.
No, you got 2 options. Either Stitt can reject the recommended rules of the agency.
That's the next thing. That I'm saying the omnibus.
Yeah.
That will go through. The rules will go through, except if Governor Stitt overrides and puts the nix on the rules. So we need everybody to contact their the governor and let him know that that you are against these rules. Go to constitutional grounds. We've got the link up there so that you can find out how to contact the governor. So it's right there. So we do need that.
You got one other option. They have to come back to officially vote to adjourn sine die.
They must do something there. We don't know. What we do need to do is put pressure on everybody. We still need to put pressure on the Senate.
Yeah.
But we especially need to do it through the governor's office at this point.
Yes.
I would still say call Kim David's office, call Senator Treat's office, Senator McCourtney's office, and just hammer them. So it's a good point you bring up, David. Still hammer them to hear HJR 1040. We tried to get it put on to 2 other bills before everything was done. It was an exhausting day, and we didn't get it done. But there was a lot of business that got done. They did go into a house-to-house spat for a while between the Senate and the House. It was right about dinner time, so it was like watching children get hungry and tired and start fighting with each other.
Did they actually do it out in the rotunda with boxing gloves? I mean,
no, but they were the House was sitting around doing nothing while the Senate was busy doing stuff, and that's at the point we heard that our bill was among some that weren't going to get heard. The medical marijuana bill was another one that was supposedly not going to get heard. And it was all a ploy to get something out of the House, and I don't know what it was. But.
By the way, guys, I grew up, Golden Gloves boxing was real popular in my hometown. Sometime for charity, I'd like to see the House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, have some Golden Gloves boxing right there in Rotunda.
Go at it.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Serbian legislature of parliament, right? They do it bare knuckle. And just in their suits.
Okay.
They just
Now medical marijuana, it went to the governor, right? The big omnibus bill.
Medical marijuana was the last one passed, I believe, and it ended up going late in the evening, about 8:00.
To the governor, right?
To the governor, yeah.
Okay, Tom, want to let you know if that passes, you can get a license to be medical marijuana patient without being an Oklahoma resident.
Ooh, a license.
Yeah, I know. That's going to allow, for instance, cancer.
I can be non-existent in 2 different places at the same time.
It's going to allow patients at Cancer Treatment Center, if they're coming down here, needing chemo and they need something for the nausea, that's going to be good. It also is going to allow reciprocity, which means, say, if you've got a Minnesota license, you can come down here and buy at our dispensaries, and our patients can, when they're in Minnesota, they can buy whatever crap they're selling there. And believe me, it's crap. It is. I'm from Minnesota. It's crap. There's only 8 dispensaries in the whole state, and they don't sell any actual weed, any actual whole flower. It's all processed chemical tinctures and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea, Van. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm an expert.
He's got a whole nother Jekyll and Hyde side.
Oh, I got one more thing. Good night.
What else you got before we get out of here? Because I got one more, because I'm still burning at it. I'm burning about it.
I think I'm done.
You know that. Anything else, guys? Okay, here's the deal. You remember when the Admiral Twin burned down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Well, Oldham, just say yeah. So take the vaccine, Oldham. So here's the deal. The Admiral Twin burned down. Everybody cared about it except for the people who own the Admiral Twin.
We didn't start the fire.
We're just trying to get out of it with the insurance or whatever, and the community is like, no, we're a community. We love the Admiral Twin. We remember growing up here and kissing our first date and getting divorced from our first wife that we met there. And so they're like, okay, fine. We'll rebuild the damn thing. So they rebuilt it, GoFundMe, all that stuff. If you drive by the Admiral Twin, it's just now reopening now because, you got enough distance there at the Admiral Twin. And guess what? It's time to paint the Admiral Twin, kids. They're letting it slide again. They own the thing. And I can see as I drive by, very carefully looking, and then back to, and then I can see that they are literally letting that thing slide again. It may not burn down this time, but it's going to rust to death with oxidation.
Yeah.
These are the things I worry about, Oldham.
I guess you do.
Well, anyway, the Admiral Twin, GT Bynum, the new police cars with the 3D Politics logo.
I guess that means we're going to have to go see a drive-in movie so that they can afford to paint it.
Nice, positive way to do it.
There you go. That's the way to do it.
We should take our new police car with our logo on it and arrest people for not being distanced enough from each other. I say we go on next Monday. I say we go on an undercover investigative report to see how many people are close or not close. And I guess PDA is out of the question now. No,
No. That started up on Friday. Once the bars opened up, PDA was in full force. I guarantee.
And well, yeah, but the social distancing, remember, it doesn't apply to people of the same household. I expect a lot of people started shacking up as a result of these rules, not actually getting married, because you can't go down to the courthouse and do it the lawful way. So you shack up.
You can't get that marriage license.
Yeah.
To get permission.
We're living together for the weekend.
Term of the day, Tom. Your COVID sex buddy.
Well, remember New York City, their health department, they give all the way to do it.
Oh my gosh.
We talked about that.
When it comes to sex, I've really got to hand it to myself.
Hey, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, another exciting episode of 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook. And we hope to see you once again next week on Monday night right here on Facebook Live. We'll see you then, folks. For Tommy McCay, David Oldham, and David Van, next week.
Good night.
All right.
That should have killed it. Bro.
Are we off?
Should be.
Yeah. Now, hopefully,
Did I get it shared or did I not? I may have to start fresh.
I got a zillion windows open.
I do too. I don't know that I actually shared it because it popped up. I clicked on the thing.